Living Clean, Chapter 5, Relationships. Our recovery is based in relationships, and most of us struggle with them in one way or another. Our relationships with one another in the rooms, with the families we have come from, and the families we create, are all places where we learn to practice principles, including honesty, empathy, and intimacy. Love is a healing presence in our lives, and we experience its power when we allow ourselves to reach out. Fellowship. When NA began, the simple ideal that addicts could recover in society rather than having to be removed from it for long periods of time was radical. For many of us today, what is revolutionary about our recovery is the love and intimacy we experience with other members. We come together in fellowship. As we stay together, we find in one another a deep affection and trust that can override the hurts and squabbles we have along the way. The ties that bind us together are also the roots that nourish our growth. When our first surrender happens in the arms of NA, there is a connection that is made between the suffering addict and the fellowship. We know from the beginning that NA is our lifeline. When something else brings us ashore, we may not know that as clearly. It can be frustrating when we need to teach someone that NA is not an extended aftercare program or a treatment feeder. People get clean here, and we stay clean here. Part of what makes unity so vital to our recovery is that it can be easy to forget how similar we are. Even after we have been here for a while, we can see our differences as separating us, rather than bringing us the freedom we need to grow into ourselves. It's one thing to reach out to a newcomer we hardly know, but when we have known each other for years and still don't care much for each other, it may take a little more effort to reach across the divide. We can see that a personality that doesn't appeal to us may still be able to carry the message to someone we couldn't reach ourselves. Having concern for each other, in spite of our personal feelings, can bring us surprising rewards. When we find ourselves caring about someone we don't like or don't know, we can feel our shared humanity, and we recognize a new level of spirituality in ourselves. We call Narcotics Anonymous a fellowship for a reason. We are a community of equals. We are brought together by necessity, but when we keep coming back, we find a common bond. We have a choice not only about whether or not we are members, but also about what our membership means to us and how we experience or demonstrate it. As our connection with others develops, we move from being abjectly alone to being deeply connected. Some say that NA for them stands for never alone, never again. Connection changes us, and the fact that we are all bound by a deadly disease means that the stakes are higher. The gratitude we feel at seeing a fellow member stay clean is not abstract. We may be grateful to have had a person as our friend for many years, but the fact that we have lost so many along the way means that we are grateful in another sense. Our friendship is also a celebration of survival. Connected by our common disease and our primary purpose, we share a common bond unlike any other. From the moment we come to the door of an NA meeting, our experience is about relationships. The welcome we receive as a newcomer has a way of staying with us. Many of us share about being treated like a human being for the first time in years when we come to a meeting. That first meeting was the first time in a long time that someone treated me like a person and not like a problem or a project. The fact that people greeted us, sat with us, even hugged us without wanting anything in return seemed more surprising than the message we heard in words. The wordless language of recognition, belief, and faith, which we call empathy, is exactly what we need. And it happens in the exchange between virtual strangers in our meetings. This is nothing short of a miracle. Over time, we learn that we have a safety net we can trust, and we rely on the people who care for us to carry us through. Relationships are one area where we show our differences most sharply. Some of us stay pretty isolated, while others are surrounded by people. Some of us develop large and vibrant social circles within the fellowship, while others of us have just a few friends we are comfortable with. Some of us find that in recovery we calm down in all kinds of ways, while others are still partying till dawn, but doing it clean. Some of us stop dating when we get clean, and others go a little wild. There is probably no area of recovery where we offer more advice or take less of it. But the things we all have in common across the fellowship have little to do with any rules or advice. They have to do with the nature of our disease and the tools we use to address it. What we share is the disease of addiction and the principles of recovery that can guide us in all our affairs. There are some things that apply to all of us. We have a disease, and the core of that disease is self-obsession. The most important tool we use in fighting our disease is empathy. The sense that others understand us in a deep way, and the concern we feel for others that allows us to get out of ourselves and connect to something greater. Empathy means we get each other. We see the hidden darkness and love and hurt, and we understand. That is different from brutal honesty, taking the truth about someone and using it as a weapon to hurt them. Empathy is not emotional violence. We might hand one another the truth on a plate, unavoidable, obvious, terrifying, and maybe also kind of funny. But we don't use the truth as a means to gain power or humiliate. We show one another through our insight and example that we have a better self and that we can rise to it. The thing we complain about the most in the fellowship are often the challenges from which we learn the most. As much as we would like to imagine that we would learn to practice spiritual principles, by reading about them, we learn what they mean and how to apply them by bumping up against each other. Sometimes roughly, sometimes simply not escalating a conflict can be a success. It may not be within our power to make peace, but we can certainly keep a situation from impacting the newcomer or the atmosphere of recovery we all treasure. Many times we have seen members who actively dislike each other set aside their differences to help a newcomer, or at the bedside of a sick friend, or at a moment of distress. The life and death struggles we experience and bear witness to put everything else into perspective. The conflicts, the drama, and the breakups in the rooms help to wear away our rough edges. We learn to deal with each other in spite of our feelings and our history. The intensity of the fellowship is what brings us from our condition as isolated, alienated, and frightened addicts to loving, caring, and sharing members of NA. When we are in the middle of the worst kind of conflict, we may struggle to remember that we are still welcome in meetings, that we still have people whom we trust and who care for us, and that we are still very much in the middle of the fellowship of our own recovery process. We learn that when we have a genuine need or concern, almost any member will reach out to help, even if there has been some unpleasant history between us. We start to believe that we are safe. Over time, as we care for people and see that they really do support us, we start to feel a little safer. We can be a little more willing to take a risk, let go of what's not working, and try something different. Each time we make ourselves vulnerable and find someone there for us, we come to a new level of safety and trust. We often tell newcomers we love them until they learn to love themselves. What we are doing is loving one another back to life. That's true no matter how we express that love. Some of us are warm and affectionate. Some of us are gruff and removed. But what we do in the rooms when a meeting is happening is the same. We are turning our attention outside ourselves and making a new kind of connection. The basic text tells us love is the flow of life energy from one person to another. This is essential to what we do. We connect with others and through them to a power greater than ourselves. Opening up to the world around us is a spiritual awakening. One of our earliest connections in recovery is usually with a home group, whether we call it that or not, a meeting we connect with and attend regularly. Pause.